All right. Always excited to be able to chop it up with this man, one of the very best coaches in the sport, the head man over at Extreme Couture. Let us say hello to Eric Nicksick, who is kind enough to join us. Eric, good to see you, my man. How are you?
What's up, Mike? How's it been, brother?
It's been great, man. It's good to see you as always. So much to talk to you about. I'm going to probably bounce a lot all over the place, but I want to start the last time you and I spoke in this kind of a manner because you hopped on to help me with the project I was working on about Elena Kolesnik escaping from the Ukraine to come to Las Vegas. And she worked with you guys over at Extreme Couture in preparation for the 2022 PFL season. And she did pretty damn well, man. She made it to the playoffs for the first time, I believe. And, it didn't end with her getting the $1 million to help out and all that stuff, but she had a pretty damn good showing of herself, did she not?
Yeah, and we actually just talked to her yesterday. She was in the cage talking with Coach Ray. She seemed a little down, and then Ray just got on her, and he's like, "Man, like you didn't win one fight the last season, the season before. You win two. You make the playoffs. You all the things that you were going through emotionally with your family and getting out here. He's like, you got to give yourself a little bit of credit." And I think that conversation really helped her afterwards. So we're all so proud of her, and Coach Dennis did a great job with her. We actually cornered against her last year with Taylor Gordado. So it was a very interesting dynamic having her in the gym, but she became family for us. And, everybody was pulling for her. So we're all very proud of her.
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic showing. It was good seeing her do post-fight interviews after victories and things like that. And, she just ran into somebody that she's had to run into a few different times. And, there's a lot that plays into that. So I thought she did a great job. She had a great season. Looking forward to 2023. But like I said, I have a million things on my mind when it comes to speaking with you, my man. So I think I want to start with the man who will be headlining UFC 279 in a little over a week as we record, Khamzat Chimaev. He'll be facing Nathan Diaz. Khamzat typically spends time with you guys at the gym when he comes to the US and to Las Vegas. So first off, what was your reaction to this fight when you found out about it?
I wasn't sure what the UFC was going to do with Nate. And I know that was something that they kind of kicked around. So, credit to Nate for taking this fight. And, Khamzat loved it. So, I think it's going to be a great scrap, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I talked to Khamzat couple days ago, actually. He sent me a video and said, "What's up, brother? I should be in town probably today or tomorrow, I think." So he should be here pretty quick, and he'll probably hop in the room and get some rounds in with the boys and kind of round out camp here. So it'll be good to have him.
There you go. And that means probably Darren Till will be in tow as well. I know those two guys together it's always a good time, isn't it?
Hopefully, man. I actually really, really enjoyed having Darren out here. He really, I think, elevated kind of the energy in the room. Like I've never really been around Darren at all. And when he came in and was practicing with the team and just the element that I thought he brought with just his leadership role and on a team that's, we're not his teammates or anything like that, but he showed up on time, doing everything, asked right away, like, "Hey, what do I owe? What do I need to do? How can I contribute?" So I really enjoyed having Darren Till out here, man. He was a good dude.
To sort of pick the coaching brain a little bit here, because this is such an interesting fight, because you have Khamzat Chimaev, who's been on a roll. He's in the title picture at 170. He could just sit out at this point and fight for the title sometime next year. Massive favorite against Nate Diaz heading into the last fight on his contract. Very few people expect him to win this fight. I know you're not cornering either of these guys, but if you were the go-to guy for either of these men, like how would you approach this from a mental perspective, like an advisory perspective, both for Khamzat and for Nate, to make sure their heads are in the right place with everything going on around them?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And I think just with the Khamzat situation, you just got to make sure there's no letdown. Like make sure he's doing all the things that he's supposed to be doing, whether it's Gilbert Burns or whether it's Nathan Diaz, right? Because, we all know Nate's game and he's going to come and bring a fight no matter what. He's going to be tough to put away. But at the end of the day, like these are all professionals, and these guys have to maintain that same line of thinking no matter who's in the cage. So I think that's the main thing, is just make sure you're Khamzat, you got razor focus. You're going out there and doing everything you're supposed to do. I think Khamzat's style, especially his style of grappling, is just very tough when you see the way he kind of this anti-jiu-jitsu, where he likes his pins, he likes to kill the legs. He's not staying in the guard plays looking to pass and gets topside half or split and pin, or these areas that really negate a lot of the guard play. So I think for him, just go in there and do what you do and stay safe in those areas and not play around. And I think it would be a good night for him.
And then, like, if you were advising Nate, it's like you can kind of look at it from a house money situation where it's just like, would you approach Nate like, hey, no one thinks you're going to win this fight. Just go out there and have fun and then just go on your merry way. Like, how would you sort of approach that?
Nate's a dog, and I think with Nate and his durability, and after knowing like the first fight with the last fight with Khamzat and Gilbert Burns, you might want to try to see what you can do as far as putting him in some deep waters. And it being a 5-round fight, trying to make him actually work and maybe later on in those rounds. You don't want to play the rope-a-dope with him by any means, but you definitely want to try to maybe wear on his body, try to kick his legs a little bit, do some things that, maybe can be taxing later on as the fight goes on, and try to put him in some deep waters in those regards. But, I know the line that is pretty wide, but I don't think they're giving Nate enough credit as far as how good he actually is. And if I'm in the Nate side of things, I think we're trying to get him into round 3, 4, and 5 and try to work where you can get him a little deeper rounds and try to work on that cardio.
Let's talk about the bantamweight champion of the world, Aljamain Sterling, getting ready to defend his title against TJ Dillashaw in Abu Dhabi in October. I just want to say this one last time, and then I'm going to put it in the back of my mind. I would have loved to have seen Jose Aldo in this fight with Aljo. He ended up fighting Merab. He lost, and now we'll probably never see him fight for the belts ever again. And it breaks my nostalgic heart, Eric. But
yeah,
be that as it may, we got Aljo versus Dillashaw. There's a bit of heat here. Aljo's hungry. He's got this chip on his shoulder. How would you gauge his approach to this one a little more than 2 months away?
Yeah, he's very calculated right now. And everything that I think, like even our practice today, it's just razor focused and dialed in on the game plan and kind of how he wants to execute things. We always come with that 80-20 where it's like 80% of our game plan and then 20% of what we think is going to be coming at us. And so Aljo and I worked on the pads, and then we brought JP Buys in, and he came in and did some work with him as well and kind of mimic TJ. And it's very hard to mimic TJ. I mean, there's not a lot of guys out there that can do what TJ does. But just kind of maybe trying to throw things at him on what we're going to see and maybe some of the verbiage that you might hear. With that being said, Mike, his body has been maintaining well. I think the last 2 fights with the Petr Yan was the first time was the neck injury, the shoulder. Had so much stuff going on to where fight number 2, we didn't have so much to worry about. So now with this one, it's just really maintaining and make sure he comes in this fight healthy. So it's been a fun camp so far.
Did you take a lot away from the Dillashaw Sandhagen fight? Because a lot of people thought Corey won that fight, but to look at it sort of from a different perspective, Dillashaw was coming off the really long layoff. He ended up getting hurt in the fight and was able to go 25 minutes. So maybe there were like a few nuggets to really gather, but maybe not. What did you take away from that one?
Man, I loved what I saw from TJ in that fight. And I think even with the knee injury and him seeing a little bit of adversity, I love the switch up in the game plan to attack the legs. You saw a lot of leg kicks out of him to kind of limit the mobility of Corey Sandhagen. I think that fight could have gone either way. And I would have to Aljo and I watched it again. And it was tough. I think you could have judged it either side. But I think what you saw was the grittiness out of TJ Dillashaw and injuring his knee and being able to find ways to kind of come through and really change the game plan up. And I think, I think for me, just with the way that he approached that fight, I think you saw his championship pedigree, even though being out for 2 years right away in that last fight.
Aljo's always had some swagger to him. He's always spoken with confidence, but these days, at least to me, and I saw it in Jacksonville a lot, it goes a bit beyond the words that he's speaking. You could actually see it in his eyes. You could see it in, obviously, the bodies and physically fit. He looks better than he ever has. But have you noticed a change in Aljo's fire since the first Yan fight and winning the belt?
Yeah, Mike, we took a lot of shit, obviously, and it is what it is. But it was funny. Aljo and I were laughing a couple of days ago. I said, like, hey, man, every time we post a picture, we don't have 9,000 comments with people posting clown emojis, and talking shit anymore. It's a little different. Like people, I think he's gained that respect back from the overall fan base. And, I think that learning from that time really helped everybody involved. We had the ability to fight Petr Yan, go back to the drawing board and redo it again and figure these things out. But the maturity and the growth only helped all of us, to be quite fair.
A week before Aljo fights TJ, Sean Strickland's getting back in, fighting Jared Cannonier, 5-round main event. He was the star of freaking International Fight Week in a lot of ways. And he goes in and fights Alex Pereira and gets stopped in the first round. So a lot of people I might as well just ask you this. A lot of people question the approach of Sean Strickland in that fight, and he went right after Alex and he got in his face and tried to throw volume, and then, the fight played out the way that it did. So how did you react to that? Like, what is your reaction in the corner as this is all playing out?
Oh yeah, so did I. I mean, the fucking whole game plan was a wrestle, and he'll tell you that. We spent a lot of time working takedowns, working cage work, working ground control games, and so as the fight grew near, and this is true, so he'll tell you this too. He'll tell you we're cutting weight, and I was like, hey, so get in there and get on this guy's legs like right away. He's like, well, I think I'll feel it out for the first minute. I was like, bro, the longer you're feeling this shit out, the longer you're in this guy's realm. You got to watch. I said, it's his right knee and it's his left hook. He sets everything up kind of cohesive between the two. And what he does is get you to rear hand parry, even off of your jab, or feints that low kick or feints down to the body. And it's going to open up for that hook. And his hook is just, all he needs is this much space. We saw what he dropped Izzy with, and Izzy actually had his hand up. And got through and caught his hand. So that was the hard part, because all week long, even guys in the gym wanted to bet on Sean. Hey, the game plan's to wrestle. I was like, the game plan is to wrestle, but will the motherfucker go out and do it? It's another thing. So we're in the back and we're warming up, and man, Edmund Shabazian has been one of the best teammates you can imagine. He was in our corner. Those two had an all-out war in the back, and so the 1 minute of feeling out turned into like, well, maybe I'm going to feel him out for like 2 minutes. And then it's like, let me know when it's halfway. And I keep telling him, Sean, all of us in the corner, like, no, get in there, feint some level change, take this guy down. And then once you get him to worry about the takedown, then you can slow some of his striking down. But if there's no threat of a takedown early, this guy's not going to give a shit, and he's going to end up knocking you out. So I'm literally sitting there, Mike, just like this, watching the fight, calling it out, like, hey, let's get that fit in, let's lurk. And then finally I look over at Edmund. I'm like, halfway, like, let's go. Boom, gets caught with a hook. So, I'm laughing at it. I mean, he's my boy. The game plan was to wrestle. That's on all of us as a team, man. I can't play video games. I can't make him do it, but he wanted to feel it out. He wanted to see when his openings were there, and credit to him, man. He went in there and he fought. He went in there and fought. He wasn't going to make it boring, but it certainly didn't work out for us in the long run, man.
Yeah. I mean, Sean's obviously an explosive personality, but when you know him as well as maybe anybody in the sport at this point, but when you go to the back after a result like that, what's the conversation like? I don't know if that's like too private, but what are you guys talking about?
Oh, I mean, between us, is like me and Sean, nothing's really too private. He'll air everything out, but he's like, well, damn it. He goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, I would do it again 100 times over. He's like, I didn't want to go in there and just make this a boring ass fight. He goes, honestly, I wanted to test myself. And I think part of the things too, like, Johnny Eblin came out and worked with us, and then Sean went out to work with Johnny. So he was able to go spar Artem Levin out there. And when he came back, I think that gave him a little bit of false sense of reality, because he's like, oh, I was doing really well only kickboxing with Artem. I was like, Sean, it's sparring. Like, you just can't rely so much on your information that you're collecting on sparring rounds. But remember, like, the sparring that we're doing here, every round you're taking dudes down and we're holding them down. That's the emphasis of the game plan, So I think going out there and maybe sparring with Artem and sparring with these other guys gave him this thought of like, hey, I'm going to knock everybody out, but I'm going to beat him up on the feet. But right after the fight, he's like, you know what, man, I went out on my shield. I'm okay with that. And I think that's why a lot of the fans and why we all love Sean Strickland. He's out there to bang and he's out there to scrap. Not necessarily the smartest game plan, but God love him.
What's it been like having Johnny in the gym? Because everyone that I've talked to that's ever worked with the man said that this guy is a freak. He was like born for MMA with the way that he's progressed, evolved, and goes out there and has that win against Gegard Mousasi. This guy's super legit. Super legit, student of the game, very open-minded. I think he came out early in the Mousasi camp. And then, so when he came out to Couture's, I think he was going to be for about a week and a half. And I was like, you know what, man, like, we got to get you hooked up with Sean Strickland. I think Sean's going to be a very good look for you, to emulate some of the things that Mousasi might do, but more body type. And then, I talked to King Mo and kind of went over what they were doing game plan wise, because when I was going to work with him on the pads, I didn't want to throw a bunch of stuff at him that he's not going to work. So kind of got an idea what they were looking to do and some of the stance switch stuff and how they're going to open up out of southpaw and do some things. And
man, like just a student of the game and being able to apply his wrestling and make you look at one thing with the level change and set up a lot of the overhand series stuff that they do. So, man, he's a great guy to have in the gym. I love what he brings to the table, and he just raises the level of the gym every time he's here.
I feel like because we're bouncing around so much that I've kind of buried the lead here, but what's going on with our guy, the heavyweight champion of the world, Francis Ngannou? I know you're not his manager and you probably aren't, in the middle of the talks and the contract stuff, but physically you've probably seen the man. He's said on his YouTube channel, if he had his druthers end of the year, maybe early next year, he can get back into form. Do you feel like that timeline might line up, or what are we thinking there?
Yeah, so I actually talked to Francis this morning. He's going to be out in Paris. He should be making the UFC fight in Paris out there, and then he's going to head home. So he should be home by his birthday. And, once he gets back home, I think when the PI kind of reevaluates him, because he was home for the last month, you kind of see where his knee's at. And then I speak to Markel quite regularly and just understanding what's going on the business side of things. And I don't think December is really gonna be a realistic timeline, just pending on where he's at on the rehab. Because I think this is like 5 months. I think he had the surgery in October. No, not October, March. And so I think October would make it 6 months for him, a little bit past that. So with that type of injury and that type of surgery, I think December's shooting a little close, to be honest with you. But you never know with this guy. He might come back and be ready to go. You never know what the UFC is going to be putting on our plate either. So the fight that makes the most sense is obviously Jon Jones, and that's the fight we all want. So the way I look at it, Mike, is Jon Jones has been out for 2.5 years now. I think it's like if we can't do it December, depending on what the way their schedule's laid out, the UFC obviously has their slate of pay-per-views all laid out. Maybe it's January or February, somewhere along that line.
Yeah, I feel like the longer we go without any sort of Jon Jones fight announcement, the more that I feel like the UFC is just going to wait for Francis to come back.
Might as well, right? I mean,
what's 2 to 3 months?
What's 2 to 3 months now at this rate, right? Where John's been out for so long. Stipe hasn't fought since Francis beat him. So I think that would be over 2 years too for Stipe if come March of 2023. So, might as well wait another month when this is the super fight and the fight to make. So for me, honestly, Mike, I love the Stipe fight again or the Jon Jones fight. If I had my choice between the two, obviously I want to compete against the best to ever do it. In my opinion, that's Jon Jones.
The only other one that I would like to see, and the one that we haven't seen, the one that just be not hilarious, but just be super fun. If Tai Tuivasa beats Cyril Gane on Saturday, I feel like you have to push him to a title fight. Now's the time. Maybe he's not going to jump over John, but let's just say they book Francis and John, we know how John can be. Sometimes, he might not make it to the fight. He's just nah, I'm not getting enough money. I think Ty's the guy. You slide him right in there. It's super fun.
Yeah, 100%. Either Ty or Nate Diaz if Nate wins.
Well played. A few other fighters I want to ask you about. We saw Miesha Tate on the Long Island card. Tough night against Lauren Murphy. Lauren looked really good in that fight.
Yep.
But she seems in really good spirits. Doesn't seem like flyweight is going to be her future, but in terms of just getting back in there, this is a much different reaction than we saw after the Raquel Pennington fight at MSG a few years prior when she announced her retirement. So what's her mindset been like, and what have you seen from her since the fight in July?
Great mindset. And, we spoke quite a bit about just the camp as a whole. And for us, you got to think the whole camp was predicated on the weight loss and the weight cut. So we didn't get to do a whole lot of actual MMA training because every day was predicated to hey, we got to get the weight down. We got to do this, we got to do that. So, Coach Cal and his team did an amazing job to get her on weight and did it very comfortably. Her weight cut was unbelievably easy. So, but unfortunately that time with having 2 kids and having, jobs and husbands and running around and doing everything, it was kind of hard to do a whole lot of, the training that we wanted to do. And that was being transparent. She brought that up too. She's like, man, I just felt like my whole camp was predicated on this. So, if she decides to move back up and take another fight at 135, I think already with what she's built with Coach Cal and being able to come in and go get a fight that you want to fight, go get somebody that you enjoy and that gets you up and ready to compete. So that's the biggest thing with me with Miesha is just man, find something that gets you up in the morning and how it makes you want to compete. So I love being around her, man. She makes me feel like I'm lazy as shit.
How's Casey O'Neill doing?
She's doing great. I think she's same timeline maybe as Francis, maybe a month behind. So she's in the gym every day, Mike. And this is the thing that, like, when she had the injury, we talked to her about. I was like, look, I want to make sure that you're getting your mental reps in and you're being around the team. And now I'm like, hey, get the hell out of here, because it makes her miss the sport, but it also keeps her mental reps sharp. But she's been a great teammate. She's really been helping out everybody as much as she can. She started to hit pads with Coach Eddie again. Hopefully soon we can get her on the mat and get her grappling. But she's so eager to get in here. We just don't want to have a setback. And Heather would be super pissed off at me if we're doing something we're not supposed to be doing. So, but just having her in the room is just great energy for everybody.
Cody Garbrandt's getting back in there.
Yeah.
I know it was supposed to be a little bit sooner, but I had an injury, and now it looks like October 1st, I believe, is when that fight's going to happen. So a lot on the line for Cody here. He's tried to went down to 125, didn't really work out. Now he's going back up to 135, facing a very dangerous, underrated guy and Ronnie Yahya, who's looked really good as of late. I think this is the perfect piece of matchmaking for both guys, honestly, because if Ronnie wins, it's a big win for him. And if Cody wins, this is the kind of fight to sort of get him back on track. I think it's perfect matchmaking. What have you seen from Cody? Is he putting a lot of pressure on himself at this point?
I don't think he's put a lot of pressure on himself, but my biggest thing with Cody is settle on something. Figure out coaching staff, figure out game plans, figure out everything that you want to do. Because the first, it's almost like the tale of two camps. Myself and Jimmy Gifford had him all for the first camp, and then Ronnie ended up with the injury. And then unfortunately, due to bookings, I have Jeremy Kennedy and Max Roshkoff the same night because Bellator is October 1st. So now he's working a lot with Coach Dewey Cooper, who's obviously my guy, but love him to death. And he's getting his reps in with the guys over there as well. So, and then we got him hooked up with Sean Friedis over at Project Wellbeing, and kind of working on a lot of his strength and conditioning areas that he felt that he needed improvement on. And it was a lot of posterior chain, core work, things of that sort. And then, just the rounds, the cage time, just things like that to help with his confidence. And that's the biggest thing when he came to the gym, Mike. I was like, hey, go back and watch your Dominic Cruz fight. Go back and remember who the fuck you are and what you're capable of doing, and try to get up here a little bit more than, more the skill set things. I think the skill is always going to be there. And the vision is always going to be there, but just making sure that he understands who he is and what he's capable of doing is really most important for all of us here.
Well said. And a guy who's had to overcome, a lot of craziness too is Max. You mentioned Max Roshkoff, who had his UFC fight. We all know how that played out. I spoke with him a couple days afterwards, and it was just a frenzy with everything that happened. But he's found himself again, and he's on a roll. Just signed a long-term deal with Bellator. I mean, this has been pretty cool to watch, I would assume, for you, right?
Man, it does. It pulls at your heartstrings, And when he decided he wanted to come back and train, he called me and apologized. He left the gym. He was training just exclusively over with Robert and those guys, and he was our family, So we didn't have any really connection with him. And then the poor kid went and stayed in a room for 6 months after that, just was ordering Uber Eats and spent all of his money on food and really barely doing anything. He's a recluse. So being able to get him not only back in the gym, Mike, but just the human element, bro. He's a great kid. He's a great kid. I told him, listen, I don't care if you ever fight again in your entire life, but I want you to be healthy and I want you to be of a good state of mind. And if that means it's training, why don't you come back in the gym and just train with the boys and see if you like this and want to do this anymore. And a couple weeks go by, and the first guy that he runs into was Sean Strickland. And I was like, hey, you're going to get it. You're going to hear from these guys. A lot of guys weren't happy with the way that fight ended and what went on. But if you're going to come in and you're going to set foot in this gym, you're going to have to face Ray Steffo and Brad Tavares and Sean Strickland and the guys that had a certain way of feeling about the way that went down. And the first guy he runs into is Sean, and Sean let him have it. You know what? And then Max went rounds with Sean, and Max was taking Sean down and getting on his back and giving him fits. And then all of a sudden you can see that these two are helping one another. So he fit right back in the room. The guys took him in with open arms, and you can see his confidence growing and growing. And he went out and won his last 2 fights. And now he has his Bellator debut on October 1st.
Good for him. Last thing I wanted to talk to you about was, and you've touched on it on Twitter. It's created a storm. It's something we talk about at MMA Fighting all the time. It's cheating, Eric. It's cheating, because nothing annoys me more than watching a sport, watching somebody cheat and nothing happen. Because, and I watched a video clip of Herb Dean talking about why he doesn't take points away for fence grabs. And he basically said, listen, it's a natural thing. People like if you fall down, you're going to grab a fence, but because of how fights are scored and because of the 3 rounds, like if I take a point away, like I'm taking a fight away from somebody. And I understand that, but it's certain, but now you're setting a precedent, Eric, and it drives me bananas that you can just go out there and cheat and nothing's going to happen. You can grab the fence, you can grab gloves, you can poke a dude in the eye, you can kick him in the ding ding, and you're going to get warned 4 or 5 times, but no point's going to get taken away. So one of my colleagues says all the time, if there are coaches out there who are not teaching their fighters how to cheat, but are not saying, if you're not like Gordon Bombay in the beginning of Mighty Ducks telling your guys to cheat and take falls because there's no repercussions, you should be doing that. So what have you seen? Like, what can we do to change this culture? Because it is super annoying. And at first, when we started making those stances, people are like, oh, you're telling people to cheat. But the more and more people are doing it and it's not getting called, people are like, you know what? You guys are right. Like, they should keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's like, well, we got to level out the playing field then. And where's the consistency and the transparency across the board, right? It's like, if you're telling us in the back that you're going to do the X, Y, and Z, but then in the fight you don't do those things, that's the biggest thing I have a problem with. Is that like a lot of the fans don't see is that referee comes in the back and then goes over his sets of rules with us, right? And the 2 guys that I think they're going to be the most consistent for me is Keith Peterson and Jason Herzog. Those guys are always, to me, the most consistent, right? And then, with Herb, I think he has the most reps. I think he's the guy you're going to see the most. So whatever, it's like in baseball, whatever the umpire, tell me and let me know what your strike zone is, and just be consistent with that strike zone. So if you're not going to call fence grabs, do it for both sides, right? But why have the rule in place? So why is the rule in place? That's the whole thing is, oh, well, did it change the outcome of a takedown? Right. Well, you don't know those things. Like even Herzog and I had the conversation because the guy did it on the ground, but he used the hand to kind of roll himself and turn himself to get his feet off the cage, and it allowed a get up. He goes, well, it didn't really alter the position. I go, no, it did, because I know it was already on the ground, but he was able to grab and then change the position on the ground. Oh, well, and then it's black and white, guys. Did he grab the cage or not? And then if he did, then it should be an infraction. Maybe it's not a point taken away. Maybe there's some things you can look at, but at the end of the day, man, it's just the consistency for me, the lack of consistency between these refs on some of this stuff.
If there's a fence grab on an initial takedown defense, when you're clinching up against the fence, it should be an automatic stoppage of action, automatic takedown, automatic top position for the guy who didn't grab the fence. If it's on a get up, then it should be, you put him in the friggin' center of the octagon and you put him back in the same position and we do it again. Like, it drives me bananas to watch it and not get called. And then watching the main event of UFC 278, Usman's clearly grabbing the fence and then Leon grabs it and he gets called for it. It was just bananas, man.
And that, I think that's the thing that you get so frustrated about as a coach, and the biggest one that always stood out to me was when Uriah fought Paulo Costa. In round 1, there was, I think, 2 or 3 infractions. And Mark Smith tells me, like, it was, I believe it was an eye poke, and then it was a nut shot, and then Paulo Costa hit Uriah the same way he uppercutted Luke Rockhold right in the balls. And then, but I was like, so here was the explanation that Mark gave me, was the eye poke, and then he went over and talked to the corner, and then it happened again. And Mark says, oh, there was a problem with the translation. Dude, fuck the translation. It's an infraction. It doesn't matter. An eye poke's an eye poke in any language. It doesn't matter. So now Uriah is emotional and he's upset because when we get in the round, between the round, Mark comes over and yells at Uriah because Uriah is pissed off that he's not getting a point. Paul's not getting a point taken away. So not only do we feel like we're fighting Paulo Costa, we're also fighting Mark Smith in the corner. So like, goddamn, dude, like you got to cut us a break here. Now you're coming over and scolding us for yelling at you the moment we have a minute to rest. So yeah, and then obviously that was a long time ago. Mark and I have kind of cleared the air on that stuff. But yeah, that's my biggest thing, man, is just like the lack of consistency at times. You're like, holy shit, are we fighting the referee and the fucking guy across from us?
I mean, any other sport, a penalty is a penalty no matter what. Like if there's a pass interference play down the field, it's like, well, he didn't mean to bump him on the fade route into the end zone. So we're not going to call it. And then if he does it again, well, I gave him a warning. So this will be the second one. It's friggin' half the distance to the goal or it's the spot foul. It drives me. It's just so crazy. But MMA is exempt from all of this. And now we're fighting for open scoring. Come on, man. Like we have other things we need to worry about first before we talk about open scoring.
We got a lot to fix, brother.
It drives me crazy. But I had to get some things off my chest. I'm glad because you talked about it on Twitter. So I definitely wanted to get your reaction to all that. But Eric, you're the man. I could do this for another hour, but you're a very busy man, so I'll let you go. So thank you very much. All the best to you and the squad. I know you got every week somebody fighting, so appreciate the time, my man, and all the best the rest of the year. I'm sure I'll talk to you before that, but just throw that out there just in case.
Yeah, anytime, Mike, man. I'll talk to you soon, bro. Thanks for having me on.